call this special meeting of the City of Lawrence Stormwater Board to order. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to ask board members, I know that I moved the agenda around a little bit, but could we move number 5, the comments of administration, up to number 3, just so they can tell us what they're doing before we take comments?
Sure.
Thank you. We will do that. So Renee, is it going to be you or Jim who's going to give the presentation on what the change is?
I'm going to do it, and Chris is going to step in and add to it, or
Okay.
Paul or Andy,
Okay.
if needed. And then we've got our inspector, Cameron from VS Engineering, and we've got the designer, Robin, from RGI. So I've brought together the whole team to answer any questions y'all may have.
Fantastic.
Okay?
So can we have somebody give an
Yep.
overview?
So I sent over earlier the summary of what's happened, and I'm not going to read that to you word for word, but basically what's happened is when they started the stormwater portion of this project, we had combined it with a water main replacement project that Utilities was doing. That portion is done to where we can start the stormwater portion. And when they began, they discovered that there are up to 19 sanitary sewer laterals that will not have the right clearance. You have to have 18 inches of separation, and those 19 are not going to have that separation that's required. So the engineer, the designer, came back and asked that we reduce the pipe size from 48 to 36 and add cradles to hold those sanitary sewer laterals. It's a industry standard to do that if you can't get that separation. Now, the issue with that is these sanitary sewer laterals are approximately 70 years old, and they're made out of clay tile. Clay tile, we don't want to not replace those and have them fail after the project's done, because we're in such close proximity and we're touching the sanitary lateral. So right now we know of 5, and we're thinking there's going to be 19. So we've budgeted for all 19 to have the cradle and to have the sanitary sewer lateral replaced from the main all the way to the edge of right-of-way. And just to be financially responsible, I personally think it would be bad practice if we left them in the condition they are, knowing that they're 70 years old and fragile, and put the road back. And if they fail, the residents could come back and say, well, you did this project and you did this, and we're tearing up a brand new street. So to not waste money, and to be, like I said, financially responsible with the taxpayers' funds, I think it's in the best interest of the city if we replace those laterals that we are having to manipulate.
And it's
So
19.
the water line is in?
The water line is in, and these are sanitary sewer conflicts. So the lateral, like I said, doesn't have 18-inch clearance from the storm pipe. And to prevent, if that lateral were to break or fail, it could get into the storm system without that separation, and that cradle is to help prevent that.
So then this is to leave the storm intact and replace the sanitary?
We are going to replace the storm.
Okay.
We had proposed a 48-inch pipe for the storm pipe. In order to get the most clearance we can get, we've reduced that pipe to 36 inches and added this cradle between the two.
So how's
We need
that?
to keep the elevation for the sanitary lateral where it's at so that it can function properly. You have to have that fall.
So how did going from a 48 to a 36 impact the hydraulics?
Robin?
Thank you for the question. So we initially designed this as a 40-inch pipe to detain water because we're connecting into an existing portion of storm sewer, we wanted to detain as much as possible to not overtax that system. So I ran the hydraulics and determined that we're talking a matter of maybe an hour or a few hours of potential additional surcharging that would be in that downstream system. So not days and not ponding for days like we were seeing before this project came in. So we're still providing a large amount of detention, just not quite as much as we'd initially proposed, now that we know that there's a conflict for putting that large pipe size.
Is there a standard for how much detention you would want?
When it's a drainage improvements project like this, typically you'd like to, we're not adding pavement really, we're just replacing the pavement that's there. When you're adding pavement, you would detain the 100-year post-construction would match the 10-year pre, but because we're not adding pavement, that's not really the standard that we're working to meet. We're really just trying to not cause additional surcharging in that downstream system. So provide additional drainage from the surface to the subsurface to your outfall without causing issues downstream.
So it's not going to impact upstream, this is trying to detain,
No, so you're improving upstream without pushing the problem downstream by providing that detention.
okay,
Did that answer your question?
that question?
Okay. So the budget that's before you for the $269,458.69 addresses all 19 of the potential conflicts.
Okay,
Okay.
but it does not include additional costs that might be incurred, right? So it's
This includes, so right now, we're aware of 5 conflicts. And looking at the plans, it looks like there's going to be 19 of them. So we went with replacing, so there's a bunch of different, if you look on the 230101 CO1, this right here is what I'm looking at. We're going to do like an a la carte. So one lateral may need to be replaced from the Y that connects to the main all the way to the right-of-way with another Y. Some of it may be in good condition and only need the Y to be replaced. So when Midwest is out there, they're going to a la carte it. They're going to look at each individual one and say, well, this pipe is in good condition. It meets our standards. We don't need to replace it. But that Y isn't in very good condition, so we're going to replace that. What we've budgeted for is replacement of the Y at both ends and the pipe all the way for all 19.
I think that's a responsible.
I just want to I don't want to come back in a week and say, oh, I'm sorry, I need another $60,000.
Sure.
I want to make sure that I'm covering what could happen with all 19 of the laterals.
So Midwest is constructing this, and they're also making the decision of how much to replace, or is there?
No, so that's what Cameron, our inspector out there, will
Okay.
look at the laterals and say, yes, you're replacing from Y to Y, or this one, you're only doing this. And it will be an a la carte for each one individually.
So there's some governance around how
Yes.
I have
decisions
an
made.
inspector on site, and I am on site most days.
Yes.
All day long. So
Okay.
somebody with experience who is on your guys' side will be on site at all times.
Right.
So, great.
Okay, so where do this line that talks to this change may also require additional contract time will be addressed at a later date and a future change? It sounds like if we agree to this, there's maybe another change order down the road?
So at this point in time, we're not anticipating that there's going to be a delay of the project for this change. But depending, if all 19 need to be replaced, that may cost some additional time. And we just don't know how much time that's going to be. I have no way of really estimating that. So I would like to ask the board to either allow a contingency, what you think would be appropriate, Industry standard is 20%. Do we need that much? My recommendation would be I'd rather ask you for too much money now and come in and say, I'm below that. I didn't need 300,000, I only needed 200. Than to come back in a week, like I said, and ask you for even more.
So but this 269 that we're asking for on this is assumed to be worst case?
Yes.
And yet there's still a line in there that says this might change. Is this only reflecting the time, or is there some cost?
This is material, and so Cameron, did we included some time in here too?
So it's impossible. I do not want to lock Midwest into an amount of days at this point. And I know that they may be owed time in the future, depending on, because it is extra work. But if we, I think that's something that we negotiate later at the end of the contract and not now, because it could push them to, or delay the project further than
And then charge us for delays.
at this point. And then they would continue to say, hey, Lawrence is delaying this project because we were waiting for approval. So right now, the change order is written only for the monetary value. Change order in the future for time only related to this same work may be necessary, yeah, exactly.
Yes. If you'll allow me to address the board, thank you, Renee, for doing that. That's a great job. I think one of the things that we've drilled home is that we don't want the citizens to incur additional costs for not replacing the laterals. That's what's reflected in our ask. And one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we wouldn't have to reopen streets and surfaces for future projects that needed to occur just through natural wear and tear. So one thing that we want to drive home is that these clay tiles, they're 70 years old. Homes were built in the 1950s, and so they're going to naturally fail. So what we want to do is do some preventive things to ensure that our citizens are getting the service that they're paying for, that's taxpayers, but also that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that we're doing upkeep and maintaining our infrastructure.
Right. And so this is inclusive of all 19 should
That's
be.
exactly
Yes,
right. And that is because, as Renee stated earlier, we're forecasting replacing all 19, but what we don't want to do is not include that ask. And then if the homeowners were to sell their home, and thank you, Jim, for bringing that up, they're going to incur the cost of that. And so we don't, not that we're planning on these cradles failing, but we want to keep in consideration that they could.
Right. So I understand the timeline could be extended, okay. But then there's a cost to that as well that is unknown at this point.
Correct. And I just for the record, we are aware that there have been some inconsistencies as it relates to certain delays, and we're addressing those as we see them come. And we're very keenly aware, too, that, as you mentioned, we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that we're utilizing taxpayer dollars in an appropriate way. So we're having additional conversations with Midwest to ensure that there's some urgency and some time clicking here, that we don't want this to go in indefinitely. And so those conversations are being held outside, but we can discuss that with greater specificity if you like, but those conversations are occurring. I wanted to make sure that I officially said that as well.
All right. And so the source of these funds, where does that come?
So we do have funding available in the 2024 stormwater budget that has not been encumbered,
Okay,
and that's where I plan to take these funds from.
okay. And so those are not earmarked for anything at the moment?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
all right. And what's the original contract amount?
The original contract amount was for $1,127,725. The change is for $269,458.69, bringing the contract total to $1,397,183.69.
Okay. And what will the source of unallocated funds be after this 269 is permitted?
What the balance of the stormwater funds?
Right.
There was $1.5 million in there, so 750,000,
Okay.
so.
And that is.
And so this is the project that has the Okra grant.
Okay.
And so that's another reason for the urgency of getting this approved is that funding is valid for a specific amount of days. And we've got to get this project moving forward, and so we can utilize those funds.
Right.
So that 1,127,000, the 600,000 comes off of that. So that's not the total out of pocket for the city. 600,000 of that 1.3 million is Okra funding.
Okay.
Okay?
And when do those dollars have to be used?
By the end of summer. I think the date is November 1st.
Is there any available funds from a vehicle like that that would help with this change order? Or-
No, that is the maximum grant allowed for the Okra grant,
Okay.
is the 600,000 that we were awarded. So I can't go back and say, hey, can you pay half of this $200,000 increase? That, like we could with NDOT. So this is a different funding source, a different grant program, and that is the maximum grant that's allowed for any project.
Is there any other source of funds? These are sanitary that,
There may be, but we don't have the time to go look for those and apply for those grants and other funding opportunities to complete this project because we're on a deadline with the Okra grant. And we would risk losing, depending on when their deadline for application, how long it takes them to review it, and to award us the grant, I would be worried that we would run out of time. And that's why I'm asking that it be taken from our existing stormwater budget.
One last question. I know
ma'am.
that Cameron may have said he didn't want to give us a recommendation on time, but as things stand currently, what is our recommended time that this project would potentially be completed? If you can answer that.
I would have to look at Midwest schedule to give you an exact answer, and I may be able to follow up with you after, but I would guess that we could complete the project in a month. I'm leery to leave you with that because Midwest has been a pattern of issues with meeting deadlines, so.
Okay.
So the last meeting we are, and just so you as a board are aware, we have been attending biweekly meetings with Midwest, getting updates every other Thursday on where this project is, where they're at, getting updated timelines. Right now, their completion is about the 1st of August. But that's subject.
okay.
I know you made reference to the sanitary sewer, but they wouldn't have the issue if we weren't putting our storm sewer in. That's why
Right.
we're asking, we're creating the possible problem, not the sanitary sewer. I mean,
Right.
if we weren't there, they wouldn't have a problem.
All right.
While
You
we're
wouldn't be
there,
disturbing
while
it.
we're there, it makes more sense to fix it right,
Yeah, and this is
not have to go back later.
going to be clay with PVC replacement?
Yes,
Burn code,
Yes.
concrete jacketed, yes.
Okay.
So
which is a much better pipe.
it's our project. I mean,
Yeah.
yes.
Much better part. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jim.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions from the board? Any other comments from the administration? Actually, would you like to introduce yourself? You're the new,
Yes,
Public Works.
if I haven't had an opportunity to introduce myself, I'm Christopher Wilburn, Director of DPW, and I have the pleasure of working with my colleagues here. So I'm very honored to have the audience with you guys, and we look forward to many more successful runs, right?
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for what you do for our city.
welcome aboard.
Glad to meet you.
We'll move on to citizen comments. can't believe there's not a whole room full of people wanting to comment on stormwater pipe. All right, seeing none. Other comments from the board, discussion?
None here.
Seeing none, then we will go to the vote. All those in favor of this change
We
order?
have a motion for approval first,
We
please.
probably better get a motion. Okay. Thank you, Renee.
I'll make a motion, the first motion to approve the new change order budget for the stormwater project.
Okay, motion by Tracy Boyd,
Second?
second by Rob Schaffler. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right, that is passed. Seeing no other business to come before us, we are adjourned.
Thank you all.